So this box here is pretty much my collection of all the seeds I have. Stuff that I've bought, stuff that I've collected myself over the years. And I just basically use a cardboard box with these divider strips that basically give me different segments and squares. And I just made a label for each of the different kinds of seeds so that when I want to go look for something, I know what area to go to. And so categories that I use would be things like legumes or fruiting vegetables, vegetative greens, things that kind of form bulkier veggie but not starchy veggies like radicchios, broccoli, fennel, celery, artichokes, things like that. And then herbs, I have another section here for that. Another one just for lettuces. One here for hardy greens. These are the tougher greens like kales, chard, collards, etc., etc. Vining vegetables, things like cucumbers, melons, whatever kind of tends to vine, and because that way I'll know that these vegetables are going to go in their own dedicated areas that can deal with vining veggies. Rooting vegetables, carrots, beets, things like that. Flowers, and then just some miscellaneous stuff, most of which I've collected myself. And the thing that is that over time, seeds become less viable. So temperature fluctuations, just aging in general, but mostly humidity, light exposure, and temperature fluctuations. Those are going to be the main factors that impede the viability of seeds for germinating. So I do have older ones here that have gone through more ups and downs. And when I use them, I want to guarantee that I'm going to get something to grow. So I'm going to plant a lot more of them all at once just to increase the chances that I'll actually get some result. Once I'm done with all of that, I basically keep this storage box in a dark place where temperature is relatively cool and doesn't fluctuate throughout the year, which for me is a closet in the basement of the house. It's the best place that I can keep these without having to stick this in a fridge and risk humidity being exposed in through the paper, because it is cardboard and the packets are also paper. So humidity is something we want to avoid. So I've got my Rockwool cubes here and I'm just dipping them in my pH and mineral adjusted water. And I'm getting these ready for my germination station so that when they're a little bit bigger, they can go in the tower garden. And since I have some seeds that are kind of old, so their germination rate's going to go down a bit. And so the way that I like to do these now is with older seeds or less viable seeds, I just put a lot of seed in the little cubes. And then whatever comes up, if I need to thin it out, well, that's easy enough to do. A really handy tool for this is using a little wooden skewer, because when I get it wet, I can grab these really tiny basil seeds here and they'll just stick on to the wooden skewer, which makes it really easy to place on the Rockwool cube. So in this one here, I'm actually going as far as putting 8 seeds. And I'm just placing them in a circular pattern around the cube. Now personally, I don't find that seeds are really an expensive investment, so I don't mind putting in a lot of extra seed and then thinning out as necessary, because it's really not that difficult to get new seed every year if need to. And if you're harvesting some of your own seed, well, that doesn't even cost you anything at all. Now once I have them in, all I do is I use not the pointy end, but the wider end. And I just press them down into the Rockwool, not much more than once or twice the depth of the actual size of the seed. I think that's a pretty good guide, so that it doesn't make it too difficult for the seed to sprout out. And I don't even use vermiculite or anything to cover them up, because I can just simply use the wooden skewer and just cover up the hole where I press the seed down, and the Rockwool itself is going to cover it from light and maintain humidity on top of the seed. And then just give it a bit of a press to mimic a little bit that slight compaction that the seed would have as if it was under soil. Now I'm just running this over to my germination station. I already have most of these filled up. Building a station like this is really easy to do yourself. I have a video on how to do that if you want to check that out. So here's another way that I occasionally like to germinate seeds, and really I would only use the paper towel method for seeds that are a little bigger. Definitely not for anything too small, it's just not necessary. But it does make it easier when you're doing something like, say, pepper seeds, because I don't know what their germination rate is going to be, especially if I'm using older seed, and surprisingly they have almost 100% germination rate. Now when you do this, you can just cut paper towel slits to according to whatever size is going to meet the amount of seeds that you're going to germinate, and then you can have them overlay a larger paper towel sheet, and then you insert it into a large Ziploc bag, and you can put little labels on top so you know what seeds are what. Now I just took them out, and then I spray them with water because the seeds are going to sprout their tails right through the paper towel. So much so that's already going through the second sheet here. I don't actually have to pull this out of the paper towel. I can just rip around it, and the paper towel part can go directly into the soil. That's not a big deal. This way I'm not disturbing the root. And in this case here, this is a long red bell pepper from last year that I saved the seeds from. And so I just took the seed that was still in there, and I'm going to put this guy in the cups that I already prepared with potting mix. Just like so. And I'm going to just create a little bit of an opening so that I can slightly submerge this with the root fully into the soil. And because they were kind of compacted for a while, the green part kind of sort of closed in on itself because it didn't have any room to grow. So I'm just planting it a little deeper, but that's okay because at this stage the root's still going to develop pretty much from everywhere along the trunk line here. So I'm just keeping the foliage slightly above the soil and everything else submerged. I'm also going to use 2 in each pot, even though ultimately I only want 1. And the reason I'm going to do that is just because I notice if one happens to really be struggling, then I can just snip that one and keep the stronger one. And here goes seedling number 2. So if I had done these a little earlier, then the really cool thing is that I would just been able to insert almost the whole thing into the soil and not have to worry about being finicky the way I am right now in keeping the leaves above and the roots below. But we'll see how they do. And I'm going to give them a little bit of fresh watering. And so this is just another way to start seeds, especially when you're not sure what results you're going to get from what you're planting. This gives you more of a guaranteed result with really easy transplanting.